The basics are understand your cash flow and go ahead and get it wrong. You're never going to get it right. So just know the biweekly budgeting is never going to work 100%. We're not looking for 100% accuracy. We're looking for 80% accuracy. That's what we want. 80% accuracy on a budget will make you very rich. So that's what we're looking for. And the second thing is we want you to be tracking your net worth. And when you're doing those two things and you understand how they work together, you're already winning and you're going to get there so quick.
Hey, before I tell you the story, I just wanted to tell you that I did get permission from my child to share it with you first.
I'm so excited. Which child, older or younger?
Younger, and remember how I've been telling you a little bit about that they are now they've entered the world of dating.
Yes, Auntie Erin is very invested in this.
As are their mother is very invested in this, and I'm not sure where any of it's going to go yet, but it's fun and exciting and a whole new part of parenting that is like a whole new world.
He was kind of bragging to me the other night at the basketball game. Just, he was kind of like, listen, I've got better game than my dad, my older brother. And I was like, I can see that. So I can't wait to hear whatever this is.
He does think he's got better game than everybody in the family, to be
Yeah.
honest. And I think he probably does.
I'm not doing what you're doing.
Totally. Okay, so there's this girl that he likes, and they got together and went and watched a movie a while ago. And then the other day was sort of like their second date. So now their second date was taking place at her place.
Oh,
So
okay.
of course, immediately my questions are like, is there a parent home?
Mhm.
Like, number one question, is there a parent home? What are you going to do? What's happening? Tell me all the things. Give me
What's on
all
the
the,
agenda? Let me review the agenda of this date.
right? I totally need an agenda. Anyway, he says that they're just probably going to go for a walk. He doesn't have a lot of time. It's like less than 2 hours, but he's going to go to her house and they're going to go for a walk.
And I
Okay.
like that there's not a lot of time because she also doesn't have a lot of time. She's an academic and an athlete. Like she's got a lot going on. She's high caliber. So I like this. Yeah.
Okay, so we get the address. I'm like, well, we need it. We've got to drive you to her house. So we need the address. Okay, cool. And I was busy doing something. So I was like, Nick, would you please drive down to this neighborhood that's like literally just across the highway from us? So it's like less than a 10-minute drive. Great. I send Nick the address. Off they go. Gets home a couple hours later. And they both walk in the door and they're both laughing. Like Nick and my kiddo are giggling. And I'm like, "What happened? Like what's going on?" Giggling. I guess that my husband decided to just not use Google Maps when he went to drop him off.
Oh no.
So, this is what happens. He drops off my child in this neighborhood and sees him walk up to the door and then he leaves. He's like, "Great, he's in the right spot."
No, no, no. I can tell where this is going.
Ding dong, doorbell. And there's like some shuffling inside. Like my kid hears the shuffling and it's taking a while and the door opens and this like older gentleman with like a cane is at the door. And Mac's like, well, wow, her dad's like quite old. Like I didn't expect him to be that old. Anyway, he of course is meeting like this parent he figures for the first time. So he is going to put on like the all-star performance. It's like, "Hello, sir. How are you?" And they have a conversation that lasts minutes.
Like this
And he
guy's probably like, I don't know if he's selling me electricity or Boy Scout cookies or whatever. This is
but
fantastic.
he didn't care, he was so happy to just be talking to someone. So
Oh,
he is talking to my child, and they are having, like, a great conversation, and my kids, meanwhile, is like, "This is like, where is my girlfriend? Like, why isn't she coming to the door? This is strange." Like, I sent her a snappy chat and told her that I was here. Still nothing. Meanwhile, there is like a nice little old lady that's also living in the home that is yelling in the background, going, "Who's at the door? Do they want to come in for tea?" So eventually my kid says, is Grace here?"
this is fantastic.
The gentleman says, no, Sonny, I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong house. It's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Have a nice day." Meanwhile, invite him for tea. comes down the stairs and looks at the address because he didn't pay any attention either. He thought he was just getting dropped off at the right place. Why
Yeah.
would he think his father would take him to the wrong place? Anyway, he has to send Grace a message and say, I'm just down the street. You know what turns out? They are 2 blocks away from where he's supposed to be. So they had a really nice walk. He had to do half the walking himself just to get to her house. And then I guess they laughed about it the whole time. So
That's
Um,
fantastic.
needless to say, my husband will not probably be asked to deliver him anymore to any new unknown addresses.
But I'm vested in this new relationship. Like, I feel like you should go back there and just check in on that guy and see how he's doing.
Yeah, I was like, well, can we remember that actual address? Because it might be nice to go check in.
Hey, Erin. Loving listening to the podcast, and I've been reading through your book. I'm in phase 2 technically right now. And yeah, just really appreciate everything you have to offer and share with the world. You're amazing. Um, One thing I'm struggling with a little bit is budgeting my bi-weekly paycheck as opposed to a monthly or twice a month schedule. It just seems to complicate things. And then it seems that there might be this added benefit of an extra paycheck in the longer months. And I don't really know how to navigate or understand that. I feel like you could be someone with a lot of wisdom there. So just thought I'd send you a little message to see if you could maybe chat about that on the podcast or on Instagram. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, this is timely. You just did a live call for everybody in our Get the Hell Out of Debt community about fluctuating incomes. So this was awfully timely, Jill. I don't know
Mhm.
if she was able to come to that call, but now you can share your advice here with her too.
Well, and it's interesting because I don't know if Jill actually has fluctuating income or the same income, but is just paid biweekly, which is what I think
Mm,
she's saying here.
right.
But regardless, there are a few budgeting things that we all need to keep in mind, no matter what our income status is. And I just think it's important that we understand that there's not one way to budget, because I hear this all the time. People are like, I can't figure out budgeting. I can't get it right. It's like, well, I have a feeling you're trying to make your budget fit into somebody else's examples. And instead, what we have to do is we have to make your budgeting fit your life instead of make your life try and fit into a budget. And so, what we want to understand is how the cash comes in and out of your life. So, to be honest, Jill's already most of the way there because she's had this aha moment. And thanks for reaching out, Jill, because there's so many people listening who are in the same boat where it's like, we talk about budgeting as in terms of a monthly thing, but so many people are paid weekly or bi-weekly or semi-monthly. And there are some people that are paid monthly, and some people who have fluctuating income that just get paid whenever they pray. And then money hits the bank account, right? Like, so it just depends. But understanding that flow of cash in and out of your life is basically what budgeting is. And I hear all kinds of financial experts go, I'm into anti-budgeting. I'm into all, because we know people don't like to budget. That's all just marketing, and it all means the same thing, that ultimately you still have to understand your cash flow. So you don't have to call it budgeting. You can call it what you want. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're looking ahead and you're making decisions based on your predictions, and then you're reconciling and correcting as you go so that you get as close to that goal as possible. So in this case, Jill, what I would be doing is I would be budgeting every 2 weeks. Now, we give you a ton of examples and stuff inside the course, Get the Hell Out of Debt. So you can just look through all of those and see if there's a spreadsheet you like. There's an app that I love, and I'll put that in the show notes for you, a link for that one. You can get a free trial to try that out. I don't recommend using an app right off the beginning because most people don't even know what their numbers are. So it doesn't help to plug it into an app until you know kind of where you're at and you can kind of get a handle on things. But some people prefer to do it with pen and paper. It doesn't matter. Whatever system you choose, whatever works for you is going to be the thing that we work with. So in your case, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you are at least updating that budget every week. You're reconciling and budgeting every week. Because what happens for a monthly budgeter is if they only pay attention once a month, you might be way off course before you realize you can course correct. So we want to budget as often as possible. And so I always recommend at least once a week, you're going to sit down with your numbers and look ahead at the week and be like, are there any upcoming expenses that I think I can anticipate that are going to need to be paid this weekend? If so, let's figure out a plan to get that covered so I'm not reacting to those decisions and using money I don't have, or making a mistake that later is going to be harder to correct than if I were to just be proactive about it. So the more we're in the money, the better. Now, I also teach to spend time with your money 10 minutes a day on a little bit of a money date. And people are like, oh, that sounds awful. Well, you're not sitting in front of a spreadsheet for 10 minutes a day. That could be listening to a podcast for 10 minutes a day. That could be just going over your bank account and double checking that everything that was supposed to come out came out and that there wasn't anything extra. That could be, taking a moment to list something on a buy and sell to get rid of it. That could be marketing one of your skills in order to increase your income. There's a lot of things you can do for 10 minutes a day that aren't draining and that can help you in the long run.
Listen, like how much time do I spend on this dumb cell phone that I could be actually doing something productive? 10
Yeah.
minutes, everybody, is not a lot of time.
It's not. So you're going to get in your money all the time, but at least once a week, you're going to do your budget. Now, the very first time you go to sit down to do this budget, it's going to be painful. It's just like riding a bike after you haven't done it for a long time.
Ooh,
You and I live in a cold climate, so there's many, many months where the bike sits in the garage, and then all of a sudden it's spring, and we're like, you know what? I should bike to the store to
yep.
get groceries. And we get on that bike and we ride to the store and we're fine. And then the next day we go to do it and we're like, what happened to me arse yesterday?
I wonder what happened to my coccyx.
All of the things, bruise, and you know what I mean? It's painful the first time. But if you keep going and keep doing it, you build a crotch callus. I don't know what, I don't know. I paused there. I tried to think of something better. Nothing came. So
What is it called? What's it?
I don't know what it's called. I call them bike bites sometimes because you know what I mean? It just like hurts.
Yes.
You get a crotch callus. And so when you're budgeting, you're going to get a crotch callus for budgeting. You're going to get a budgeting callus where it's like, okay, this is hardened over now. It's it's a little easier. I don't even notice anymore. I can just get to where I want to go. And I got all the tools I need, right? And off we go. And what's cool about it is the sooner you do it, like the sooner you get into it and the more frequently you do it, the more you start to actually understand budgeting intuitively and the less you have to actually sit with a spreadsheet because you're just going to have like my kids are learning to drive right now, right? So are yours. One of yours has their license. I'm convinced still learning because I think,
Not if you ask him.
But one of the questions one of my children asked me, which I thought was so brilliant, is he says, when do you stop thinking about this? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I notice you're like tuning into a podcast, you got the wipers going. I said, oh yeah, there is a point where I don't have to think so much about every detail of driving. I'm not spaced out and on my phone, but I'm, cruising along and my body's reacting to things as they're happening and you just get a feel for it. Right now, they're like, gas is on the right, brake is on the left, turn signal on. Like it's very rigid. And that's the same with budgeting. It's going to feel intuitive after a while. And so when you're spending time with your money, 6 months or a year from now, it's going to be more philosophical questions. Like, I wonder if I should invest in this ETF or this one over here. It's going to be a little bit easier to manage. Were you going to say something?
No, but I just, I want my children to always think about driving, okay? Like, I don't want them to get to the point where they are comfortable. Are you kidding? This is the most stressful time of life right now with them behind the wheel.
Do you want more? I know you do. Why wouldn't you want more?
More
of
what?
this?
What do I want more of?
More of this. Come hang out in the online course, Forget the Hell Out of Debt. The link is in the description. You just got to click it, sign up, and we'll see you in there. Do you know, I heard the funniest comment the other day, and I wish I could remember who said it. Somebody was talking about, oh, you know what it was? It was Cody Sanchez was talking about the first time she met Jeff Bezos and his wife, who was Mackenzie at the time. And they were talking about children. And she said, the wife said the most amazing thing about like, one of the kids was learning to woodwork. And, somebody asked like, well, how do you not worry about them hurting themselves? Do you not, whatever? And she said, I would rather have a child with 4 fingers on one hand than a child with no common sense. Wow.
Okay.
So we do eventually want them to be able to do things automatically, but we want them to come at it from a position of strength, not absent-mindedness. So what you're saying is you don't feel like right now is the time for them to get comfortable, but they
Yes.
can get comfortable when they're skilled. That's what we want. Yes. So you're going to reconcile every week at least, meaning you're going to set the budget for the next 2 weeks before that paycheck hits the account. And then each week you're going to double check that, am I doing everything? Is this working? Am I running short? Is there a certain day of the month that things are harder than others? And if so, what you're going to do is you're going to make the expenses also line up with those paychecks. So it might mean you get an electric bill once a month, but what you're going to do is you're going to pay it every 2 weeks. So if the electric bill is $100, you could pay $50 every couple of weeks. Now, eventually you would get ahead. So you'd have a week or two that would be off. And I get that that's what you're saying, that extra paycheck, that comes sort of once a year. You're like, what do I do with this giant extra paycheck? Well, it's not an extra paycheck if you do everything biweekly.
Mm.
But if you continue to do it monthly, then you would use that extra paycheck if it truly was extra. If you're in phase 2, you'd use it to pay off debt. And if you're in phase 3, you'd use it to increase your net worth by buying an asset. So it's just important to know that there are benefits to being paid biweekly. You have to understand you're still getting the same amount of money every year. It's
Mhm.
just the frequency with which it's paid out is different. So it's not really like a bonus. It's just, it feels like a bonus because of the way your expenses line up. So if you can make all of your expenses line up with that check, then you're going to feel more in control of it. It's not going to feel like a bonus, but you could do your debt pay down and your asset purchasing all the time, all year long. You're not waiting for that one extra thing to hit. So you're going to want to make your credit card payments frequently. So you're not going to wait for the once a month. You're going to try and hit them more often. I know people that pay their credit cards every week. Every Friday, they sit down and pay their credit card off rather than waiting for the month. So it makes those things more manageable. You're also going to get your mortgage payment if you have a mortgage. It's different if you rent, but if you have a mortgage payment, you're going to have that mortgage payment also come out biweekly and line up with those same dates. So the mortgage payment goes from being this big monthly payment now to a smaller payment that's biweekly.
Mhm.
And all of those little details together are going to help you budget a lot more effectively. It's just that there's just a bunch of companies out there that are doing their business monthly or semi-monthly, and that's not the way your system works. So you've got to come up with a system that works with how your paychecks work.
If she's able, though, too, shouldn't she try to budget so that that extra paycheck can be a bonus that she then uses to pay down debt?
Well, that would just be another way of doing the squeeze method. So if you're new here, the squeeze method is anything you can squeeze out of the budget, you would use to buy assets or you'd use to pay down debt, depending on where you're at in the Get the Hell Out of Debt program, or if you're building wealth. So it's like an automatic squeeze. But the problem is if she's carrying debt, what's happening is the debt is compounding and we're waiting for this other paycheck. So it's like, your philosophy is a lot similar to people who go, well, pay your taxes and then get your tax refund at the end of the year. Well, basically, you just gave the government your money to hold for you, and then they gave it back where it could have been invested if you had been paying closer attention to your taxes, right? We don't want a big tax refund at the end of the year. Ideally, we want to be investing that all year round. So it just has a longer time period to compound. Now, if you're somebody who's like, oh my gosh, I always get a tax refund, I'm doing it wrong, don't worry, don't panic today. That's advanced. You'll get to that in phase 3. Right now, keep doing what you're doing because we got to take care of the little things first. But we don't want to have a forced savings plan. We want to have a system in place that allows us to really utilize our money on a schedule that makes sense for our finances. Because normally what happens is, yes, that extra paycheck comes in when they're biweekly, but they're using it to catch up because they're off by 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, depending on what's going on in their bank account.
Right. But then that's when we could actually use like other accounts, right? Like if we weren't able to actually set things up with our mortgage or whatever other payments have to come out, we could still have that money automatically come out and go to separate accounts where it's sitting waiting to go on whatever liability we have.
Yeah, we would call that a float. So
Okay.
similar to what we would do with people with fluctuating incomes, you're going to now put aside a bit of money and you do this quick and dirty style. So you don't do this with like a paycheck that already exists because you need that paycheck to budget and to manage your wealth and your increasing your net worth. And when I talk about increasing your net worth, I'm talking about that for everybody. So even if you're paying down debt, we don't focus on the debt here. We focus on increasing the net worth, which we do by paying down those liabilities or buying assets. Okay. So all of that together means that you're going to put a little bit of money aside, the equivalent of one paycheck, whatever that is for you, in a float so that if you happen to have one of those months where there's expenses coming out, but the paycheck's not coming in at the right time, yes, you've got that extra paycheck put aside in something called a float. And it's different than your quick and dirty. You put it together quick and dirty style, meaning that you like come up with it in a very short amount of time. You get viciously honest and ruthless with yourself about like getting rid of stuff or increasing your services or picking up an extra shift or doing something, whatever you can do to get that money together. But that is now what most people would use a credit card for. Whereas most people use a credit card to cover those missed dates, that cash flow lapse, you're now going to use cash. And that's going to get you ahead instead of always catching up. You're going to be working ahead of the game. So we would call that a float. So you'd have your quick and dirty, which is basically like your emergency fund, but we're not touching that for this because this isn't an emergency. This is just poor cash flow planning. So then we need another float, the equivalent of one paycheck for this if we're not going to have all of our expenses line up. But most places will work with you. You just have to get the right person on the phone who can help you. And if they can't, then make sure you're still paying your expenses bi-weekly rather than waiting for that monthly bill to come.
How do we make this word budget a word that nobody has a problem with? How do we start making it cool to say the word budget?
I don't know about you, but I think we've started because when I look at all of the fantastic people that have been through the program who've paid off millions of dollars in consumer debt, like we're probably almost at $1 billion paid off with the groups that we've helped and the amount of people that we've helped. I look at that and I go, it's catching on. It's contagious. People are starting to be like, you don't budget? Like, what do you mean? And we see that when people are brand new. So you join the Get the Hell Out of Debt program. We have a Facebook group. I'd say less than half of the people actually join the Facebook group because people are embarrassed and they don't want people to know that they're in debt and they're worried their friends will see. And it's a totally private group. So the only way your friend would know is if they were in there also.
Right.
And everybody that's in there is completely supportive. And we've had people join and they find a friend in there and the friend's like, oh my gosh, good for you. And they cheer each other on. So, but I understand why people don't. But what happens is in that group, like when somebody's brand new and they ask a question that only a noob would ask, you can tell if that person's been budgeting or not based on how they ask the question. Because we know the ones that are budgeting, the question's a little more advanced. They're like, oh, here's something that came up. It's a little hiccup. And sometimes, as you know, like people will tag me and I'm like, I'm not answering this question. I've already answered this question. I wrote a book. It's in the book. I've made you some videos in the course. It's in there. You're not going to come to the course and I'm going to teach you everything one-on-one again. You got to put some skin in the game. But you ask me an advanced question, I'm there for you. Like you put the basics together. This community is there to support you. Like we got you. We're going to get you where you want to go. But you got to at least do the basics. And the basics are understand your cash flow and go ahead and get it wrong. You're never going to get it right. So just know the biweekly budgeting is never going to work 100%. We're not looking for 100% accuracy. We're looking for 80% accuracy. That's what we want. 80% accuracy on a budget will make you very rich. So that's what we're looking for. And the second thing is we want you to be tracking your net worth. And when you're doing those two things and you understand how they work together, you're already winning and you're going to get there so quick.
Wait, like if budget is already catching on, does that make us influencers now? Did you just throw up in your mouth?
Listen, if I don't consider myself an influencer by any stretch, and I have no shade towards influencers. Like I will, if I find a good product, you know me, I'm like, have you seen Policy Me? It's fantastic. I've influenced everybody I know to get life insurance. If you live in Canada and you don't have life insurance or critical illness insurance, I have sent you the Policy Me link. I am like, it's in the show notes right now. You could go there right now if you're Canadian and you don't have insurance and you know you need insurance. I'm telling you, the best company hands down that I've ever worked with or experienced. So yes, if that's how I'm influencing people is to like not leave their loved ones in a giant financial you, then I'm an influencer. But if you think I'm trendy or cool, well, I'm telling you, my children will tell you otherwise.